Welcome on to yet another edition of the Faster Beyond 50 podcast. My name is Brad Nadalt, and today we are talking about how to handle a big break in your training block. We're also going to be talking about protein shake timing. It is a big question. We're going to look at some walk breaks and when you should be popping them into your runs, as well as pre-race activations. We've got the coach with us once again, Lindsey Parry. Nice to have you on the podcast once again. Nice to touch base.
Yeah, awesome, Brad. Lucky to be here. Some cool questions. So let's help some runners ease their anxiety.
Yeah, absolutely. There are some great questions, and if you have a question you would like to submit for us to answer on the podcast, all you have to do is click on the link that is in the description. If you're watching on YouTube, the link is just below this video. If you're listening on whatever your favorite podcast player is, the link is there in the show notes as well. So click on it, submit your question, and we look forward to answering it in an up-and-coming question. Lindsey, the first question is from Alex. Alex is in the UK. He says, I'm preparing for a big race later this year, but I have a bit of a period with several weeks coming up where I won't be able to stick to my normal running routine. During that time, I may be able to do some hiking, some strength work, but not my usual runs. What's the best way to handle this sort of break in your training? Should I pause and continue when I return, or just adjust the schedule, moving some key sessions earlier or later? So should he try and bang some before he goes or catch up later? What's the best way to handle this for Alan?
So Brad, with a lot of things, it depends how much time he's got for the marathon or what the race. He didn't specify a marathon. But yeah, so Alex, I think for me, firstly, it's important that I do like some sort of break. Okay, so this is another one of those things that I'm having to figure out what's best in the older athlete, because we also know that too long a break sets you back quite a long way, and it's much harder to get back than when you were younger. But certainly a mental as well as physical break from the usual grind is good for you. It's good for your mental recovery, good for your physical recovery. And from what you're saying, it's still not going to be an inactive holiday. So I would carry on with as much strength training as is reasonable while you're on holiday, and certainly those long hikes and the occasional jog. If you can keep that combination up, you will actually be absolutely fine to hit your straps as soon as you get back. Okay. Obviously, if you've got very limited time to your race, but just the way that was framed, Brad, much later in the year, I don't think anything needs to be done there. But I think in terms of a general principle for other people that are listening, yeah, if you're going to get back and you're only going to have a few weeks rather than a few months before your next race, then I would try to stay as active as is reasonable. I would try and keep a short, sharpish session. Okay, so I think for most people, it's not normally situation. It's normally just time when you're on holiday. But almost everywhere we go nowadays, there's a treadmill. So I'd keep one like really short session, even like half an hour, where you just do a few ramp ups on the treadmill, and then another 1 to 2 runs in the week where you just get in 45 minutes to an hour. And that means that as soon as you get back, you can literally get into peak training. And in this scenario, couple of walks, couple of jogs, couple of strength sessions, and then you're back and you've missed hardly anything. So yeah, I wouldn't let that worry you too much.
Yeah, Lindsey, I think a question like this is often rooted in fear that we're going to lose fitness. That I think sometimes, obviously, we worry we're not going to be prepared enough for the event, and by taking a break in training or taking some time off, we are going to sort of impact our training so negatively, and then our performance on race day is going to suffer. But I mean, we talk about this often with recovery after a long event, like whether you've run a marathon or an ultra marathon, and if you take 3 weeks off and don't do anything, like the sort of degrading of your fitness over time. I mean, you generally don't lose any fitness in the first 2 weeks of doing nothing. So in this case for Alex, he is going to be active on holiday doing hikes and that sort of thing. So that drop off is even less than if you were sitting on the sofa doing absolutely nothing.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And look, this is kind of just another one of those things where it's probably a little bit different when we're older than when we're younger. And yeah, I mean, let's be honest with it. We don't quite know what that line is now, but what we do know is that after a hard race, when we're older, it does more damage. So we don't have a choice but to take that recovery period. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple of areas where we could definitely do a bit more research, and I don't mean Dr. Google AI, Chat GPT research. I mean like proper university type of research to kind of see what those timelines are. Like in older people, is it 10, 15, 21 days versus 7, 14, 21 type of thing. But one thing is for damn sure, we have to take some time off. And you're right, all of those research studies that currently look at the rates of drop off were people that did the event and then were sedentary.
Mm.
And this is not going to be a sedentary hospital. So a hospital, holiday, not the same thing.
No.
So yeah, I would say that not much for Alex to worry about.
I think that's a great topic for your PhD, Lindsey. That's I definitely think that's a let me not stir the pot anymore. Next question from Liam, who's in Ireland, Liam 62. And this is based on one of like the core principles of what we talk about here at Coach Parry. He says, Lindsey and Brad, when doing easy runs or long runs, when do you decide when to take, or how do you decide when to take walk breaks? Is it better to set them by distance, for example, every few kilometers, or by time, like halfway through the run? Or only once the run gets long enough do you really need them? Lindsey, walk breaks are often, I mean, when we talk about it, I can almost hear people's eyes rolling because people are going like, why are we taking walk breaks? But they are super important as we get older. Let's just talk about the importance of why we should be using them. And then to Liam's question, how do we decide the frequency and duration?
Yeah, so I mean, his question's very easy to answer, but I'm gonna kick it to the end. So the reason why walk breaks are so important as we get older is because they are there as a safeguard against us doing our easy and our long runs too hard. And then they allow us to maintain a slightly better overall average over a longer period of time because they have a really good fatigue sparing effect because the eccentric load drops on the muscles for this consistent period throughout the whole run. So it means that we feel we get to the end of these long runs in a far less fatigued state. Um, so how do we go about figuring out what the best ratio is? Okay, so um, the first thing is we've got to remove the barrier to entry. So what do I mean by removing the barrier to entry? Well, make it easy. Like let's not be complicated. So and I think this depends on who you are as an individual. So if I was going to walk on kilometers, I would make them round numbers. I just do my whatever it's going to be, my 1 minute walk, 2 minute walk. I do it at 5Ks, 10K. I'd make it a round number. And then I'd kind of assess at the end of the run, did it get to the point where those walk breaks were taking too long to arrive? Because that'll tell me that towards the end of my run, I was getting too tired for it. So then I would shorten it to maybe 3 kilometers. Okay. But what I feel like is the easiest way of doing it, because it's so easy to set up on your watch, is you pick a time, anything between 9 minutes, 14 minutes. So again, I'm going kind of with round numbers. Yeah, 9 minutes, 14 minutes, 19 minutes. And then I would program my watch to beep. And then I would program it for my minute and a half, my 2 minutes that I want to walk. And it would beep again. And now it's time to run. Okay. And the same principle would apply. If I got irritated because the walks just arrived too soon, or if I got to a point where I was like, Jesus, like I'm actually hanging on here for a walk, then I would adjust those time intervals accordingly. And over a period of 4 to 6 weeks, I'd have a number that works for me that I like. And then that's the one that I'll stick to because it's the same one that I'm going to use on race day. You muted, Brad.
It's like amateur hour. Yeah, Linz, I love that, because that's been exactly my experience, and I'm going to give Liam some sort of my approach to it, because I did exactly that. I tried to figure out which was the best way for me, and I started on a 14-minute run, 1-minute walk, and I just found that getting to that 14-minute was like super hard. And then I was like, well, let me cut it in half, 7-minute, 30 seconds, and I found that the 30-second walk wasn't enough. So it was, I basically have landed on a 9:15 run, 45-second walk. So I'm getting a 45-second walk every 10 minutes, and it works like an absolute bomb. And yeah, I mean, Liam was asking when you start doing it. For me personally, I do it on every single run. Obviously, my higher intensity session is slightly different because those are structured differently. But if I have a half an hour or 45-minute easy run, or if I'm doing a 3-hour long run, I use the same run walk strategy, because that's, as Lindsey said, exactly what I'm using on race day, and it has worked like an absolute charm. And Lindsey, I'm just going to add this in there too. There is a lot of resistance to these walk breaks, because for a lot of people, they feel like if they walk, they are succumbing to the weakness. David Goggins definitely wouldn't approve of this strategy, that is for sure. But it's definitely not a sign of weakness, and it helps you run faster for longer. That's just been our experience, and we've seen it time and time again. And you can run fast with run walk breaks.
Even on 5K. So honestly, when I started out with this trip of getting people to run and walk more, I certainly didn't think I was going to be entertaining it for 5 and 10K races. But I mean, I had a client on Saturday that improved their 5-kilometer time by over a minute. And at 3 kilometers, they were just like, shoo, I just felt like that respiratory drive, that need for oxygen was just so high. Walked for 10 seconds, and then was actually able to just do that last 985 or whatever, the 15 meters she walked for. I don't know how, but that was enough to just like allow her to just crack on and finish and be almost a minute faster over 5 kilometers. So it really works. And I think what that highlights is that the dose doesn't have to be that big. So in your case, a minute was too much, 30 seconds was not enough, and you've fallen on a number that works perfectly. And that's why you've got to kind of figure out how these things feel for you as an individual.
Yeah, absolutely. And Linz, the next question, you're going to laugh, because you're going to think I planted this, because we have this conversation every 4 weeks. We have this conversation because that's where this session is in my training plan. And this is from Sophie. Sophie said, I've noticed that I don't really enjoy doing time trials. Lindsey, I promise this isn't from me. She says they make me anxious, and I often end up dreading them more than looking forward to them. Any time trials, or are time trials actually necessary for making progress? Are there any other ways to measure improvement without having to do them? Thanks for your help. Sophie, I feel your pain. I absolutely hate the time trials. Yeah, I do them, but they are not my favorite session in the week. Linz, any advice for Sophie and for me? If you're over 50 and want to recover from sessions faster, run pain and injury free, and improve your endurance, then be sure to join Lindsey and I for our upcoming Faster Beyond 50 Masterclass. In it, we'll show you how we helped a 70-year-old run a 47-minute, 18-second 10K, and how you can take those exact same principles and apply them in your training. Simply scan the QR code that's on screen right now, or click on the link in the description below to save your seat in the training now. We look forward to seeing you there.
So they're not absolutely, I think let's start there. They're not absolutely necessary for progress. They certainly make it easier to track progress, and they make it much easier to adjust program prescription and making sure that we're training for where we are right now. But they are not absolutely necessary. And in fact, one of the reasons why I like to keep the 3-week blocks similar, so whether we're working on hills or whether we're working on speed endurance or speed, they tend to be similar. And so actually what you can do is use those weekly workouts to track progress and kind of see where you are at. But look, I've got a few clients that don't love time trials, and I will often change the time trial into a tempo session. So now my client thinks they're not doing a time trial, but they actually are doing a time trial because I tell them what I want them to run. Okay. And then afterwards, I have a look and see how successful they were at it. And I'm like, oh, I was right about where they are time trial rise, or I was a little bit wrong or whatever. So now hopefully my clients aren't all listening to this podcast. They don't know that I'm actually tricking them into doing, because it's on the plan, and I'll often go, nah, I don't want you to do a time trial. I just want you to do a tempo run, and this is the pace. And then they go and run the damn thing, and I'm like, you know what? Removing the anxiety often makes an enormous difference.
Mm.
And so yeah. So I guess what I'm saying is you can chop it up in so many different ways to still track that you are getting better, and just to adjust the training as you progress.
Yeah, it's like putting vegetables in bolognese to get your kids to eat veggies. It's one of those things. But Linz, yeah, I'm glad you touched on it at the end, because I think the benchmarking part of it is important. And again, I feel like I'm yakking way too much in this podcast, but it was a personal experience that happened to me literally the last time trial I ran, which was a few weeks ago. In the week before the time trial, I don't know if I'd said it to you, but I felt like my intervals, the pace that I had to run my intervals at, I don't know if just they didn't feel like they were hard enough. Like I finished an interval session. I was like, yo, that was a lot easier than maybe I'm getting fitter. But I realized in hindsight, after I did the time trial the following week, that my threshold pace wasn't actually what my threshold pace was. So it was calculating the training paces for that interval session slightly slower than what they should have been. So when after doing the time trial, I ended up running, I think I ran a 29:25K, adjusted my threshold pace on a calculator within our app. And then obviously it then changes all my training paces, which meant the following week's intervals were a bit faster than the previous weeks. And I definitely felt them. So I was like, there we go. So if you don't do those benchmark sessions, you don't get that indicator. And it is important. As much as we hate doing them, every single session in that plan has a reason, and that is the reason for the time trial, unfortunately. So sometimes you have to have your medicine because it's the right thing to do. So Sophie, I hope that helps. Daniel in the UK popped us a message, Linz, and he said, hi there. Often before races, I often see recommendations to do a short pre-race activation or warm-up, usually around 10 to 15 minutes. But sometimes I wonder, is this really necessary for every race, regardless of the distance or pace? For example, if someone's running a shorter event, does it still make sense? Or on the other extreme, would it be even useful for a runner taking on something as long as an ultra where they'll be on their feet all day? Or is it better to save that energy for the race itself? What's the deal with pre-race activation sessions?
I'll throw another one in there, Brad. What happens if you are doing a big city marathon, or the Peachtree 10K in the US, which is the biggest 10K in the world, and you have to warm up so far in advance of the race, and then you get there and you stand around for half an hour before you run? Was there any point to doing that warm up? So a very relevant question. So I would say that the shorter the race, the more important the warm up becomes. Okay. So, and that's because in the short races, you are pushing at your hardest. Now, if you push your hardest when you are cold, there's a whole bunch of things that are at risk. Firstly, you are likely to just feel awful because our physiology takes a little bit of time to kickstart. So if you just go flat out cold and hit it hard, within 3-4 minutes, you'll be feeling terrible. You'll feel like you're in oxygen debt, can't get enough oxygen. Your legs feel fat and swollen. They don't want to move like they normally move. So yeah, that's kind of your short distance scenario example. And so I would say the shorter the race, the more important it is to be warmed up and to be warmed up properly. Now, for any distance, that is going to be true, that as soon as you start running, you are going to feel a little bit otherwise. And because it's a race, we tend to always start faster. So the longer the race is, the more you can afford to lose 20, 30 seconds for the first 2 kilometers. Because if you amortize them out, so let's use a half marathon, and you lose a minute in the first 2Ks because you use them to warm up properly, that's 120 seconds over 13 miles or 21 Ks. So, we're looking at maximum 10 seconds per K that you've gone and lost. Now, in the scheme of things, that's not so bad. Okay. But again, if you are looking to win the race in your age group, then that minute might be the difference between you coming first and second, third, fourth and fifth, whatever it is. Okay. So again, your situation will determine it. And then on the other extreme is at the intensity that you want to go out in an ultra marathon, it might actually be better not to be warmed up, because then it forces you to go out much slower than you would otherwise intend to. So I think the situation will determine largely how important it is. In races where you won't have the opportunity to warm, big city marathon, classic example, you need to get a routine going where you can get your mobility going. Okay, because the one thing that I haven't spoken about is if you attack a race and you're not warmed up, you have a high risk of hurting yourself, especially in the first kilometer. So you have to have a system of movement flows that will make sure that your ankles are loose and ready to go, that you've activated your calves, your glutes, your quads, that you've got some range of motion going in your hips, you've done some hurdle drills, or as my kid likes to call them, open the gate, close the gate. Importance, the order is important. I made him warm up for cross country, and I started with close the gate. He goes, Dad, you can't close the gate before you've opened the gate. You have to open the gate first. Okay, so the order of these things is important. Okay, but yeah, open gate, close gate. But some sort of mobility flow that you can do if you've just got a little bit of space around you, so that when you start running, you've at least got all the right muscles activated and ready to do their work, and you've got a nice range of motion.
Yeah, I love watching particularly elite athletes do their pre-race activations, because they've just got so much more coordination than the rest of us. It's amazing to watch. And this is maybe 13, 14 years ago. One of my comrades, I don't know why, but comrades gave me this VIP pass, and they gave me access to the warm-up area before the start, which they do in the city hall at the start. So I walk in there, I was like, hey, this is cool. They're going to have coffee and that sort of stuff. I walk in there, but it's literally the warm-up area. And you've got like all the contenders in this room. I felt like Miss Piggy at a Weight Watchers convention. I was like, how did I end up in this room? But it was pretty cool to watch. I did 1 or 2 little stretches. Wasn't quite sure what I needed to do, but and I think I had a donut and a cup of coffee, so I was good to go after that for an ultra. But yeah, super interesting to see how the elites do it. And then Lindsey, question from Margaret. We head to Australia now. Margaret 64. She says, I've always heard different advice about protein shakes, and I'm really confused. Should I be having them before a workout, after, or does that even matter? I'm female, 64 years old, trying to stay strong and support my running, but I'm not sure what timing is actually best when it comes to my protein shakes.
So if it is 100% whey and you are not adding sugar or fruits or anything else to it to push up its glycemic index, you can have a whey protein whenever you like. So we don't have storage for protein. I mean, muscles. Our muscles are our storage, but we don't have like somewhere where we can keep muscle that if we do our workout and do some damage, the body can go, let's go. And like we do with fat, we're doing a workout and we're running low on energy, the body can go to the stores, pull out some fat, some fat, turn it into triglycerides, boom, into the blood, off it goes to where it's needed. So we can't do that with proteins. However, if we consistently eat enough protein, then there will always be enough protein in the body for when it's needed. So in other words, as long as you're having that shake most days, you're going to have enough protein available to do all the work. Now, if you're combining that, either to make it taste better with sugar or fruits or whatever, or as part of a general recovery formula, like after you've done exercise, then you want to take it in the first 30 minutes after exercise. So if you have got something in there that's going to push up the glycemic index, in other words, cause your blood sugar to spike, then you want it in and around exercise, within 30 to 40 minutes of exercise. Otherwise, you can try that thing. If it's just with a bit of milk, I mean, that's only going to have 3 grams of lactose per 100 mils. So the glycemic index of that's going to be pretty low. 100% whey with milk. Yeah, then it literally doesn't matter when you take it.
Cool, great question, Lindsey. Thank you very much for that. Don't forget, if you have a question you would like answered, the link is in the description of this podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, it's just below the video. If you're listening on your favorite podcast player, it is in the show notes. You can click on that link, leave us a question. We do filter the video questions to the top, so do get those through to us as well. We do have quite a long queue of written questions, so if you want to jump the queue, leave us a video question if you don't mind. Yeah, Lindsey, as always, great to catch up. We look forward to catching up again next week. Thanks for your time today.
Cheers, Brad.